some nerd ASMR, back with another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about the Clostridium tetani bacteria. And then we're going to use a sketchy image as usual to understand what this bacteria entails. So the sketchy image is titled Research Revolution. And the Clostridium tetani is an interesting bacteria because it is a large tennis racket-shaped gram-positive bacteria. And so you can remember this by thinking about the violet hues in the scene. And you can also picture that this net over here kind of reminds you of the core of the tennis racket. So is this fence. But just think about the violet hues in the scene. The bacteria is spore forming, and so think about the walnuts that are available for monkeys to eat. Picture these walnuts as spores. And then obviously the bacteria are going to form rods. Clostridium tetani is also an obligate anaerobe. So think about the scientist wearing the gas mask over here because it is trying not to get any air. Hence it is an obligate anaerobe. And most importantly, it produces a tetanus toxin. For reservoir, it can be found in the soil, and for transmission, it can be through puncture wounds or trauma from human bites or nails. So yeah, don't bite each other. Anyways, you can remember this by thinking of the pots of soil everywhere, like here, and then also the barbed wires and the rusty nails. And then, lastly, transmission requires low tissue oxygenation because, once again, the bacteria is an obligate anaerobe. For pathogenesis, the spores will germinate into tissues and they'll produce the tetanus toxin. It is an exotoxin that is also called the tetanospasmin. The toxin is carried intra-axonally and will retrograde to the central nervous system. And you can think of this step by imagining the monkey pulling on the pulley over here and then carrying scissors. This will represent the toxin retrograde since it's going up. And then from there, after the toxin is carried intra-axonally and retrogrades to the central nervous system, the toxin will bind to the ganglioside receptors. Now specifically, the toxin is a protease that cleaves the snare protein, and this is going to ultimately block the release of inhibitory mediators like GABA and glycine neurotransmitters from the red cell specifically at the spinal synapses. By the way, GABA stands for gamma-aminobutyric acid, one of the major inhibitory neurotransmitters out there. But anyways, you can imagine this step by thinking of the monkey with the toxin scissors cutting the snare trap. So this is actually a snare trap, and the monkey is about to cut the scissor or to cut the rope to that trap. And this trap is ensnaring a scientist with the G and G letters on the uniform that is preventing its release. G stands for GABA, letter G stands for glycine. And then another scientist emerges from a snare trap next to the monkey, holding a wrench and a saw. And that helps you remember the term wrench-saw cells at the spinal synapses. So after that happens, sardonicus, or evil grin from the lockjaw. So picture the rhesus monkey over here grinning in a scary way. And then it can also cause opisthotness, which is an extension and arching of the back from spasms. This is pictured by the monkey in the arched back position, something like over here. And then general extreme muscle spasms can occur with tetanus toxins, even with the slightest stimulant. So yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention that the one snare trap that is ensnaring a scientist happens to be this one over here. So yeah. Anyways, let's move on. For the diagnosis, this is going to be a clinical diagnosis because these symptoms obviously point to a possible infection with this bacteria and this toxin. And then also the organism is rarely isolated for a culture and other laboratory tests. And then for treatment, you want to utilize the hyperimmune human globulin, or TIG, to neutralize the toxin. And you could also consider administering metronidazole or penicillin. And then it's also wise to use spasmolytic drugs like diazepam. And then also consider debridement of the wound area or any necrotized wound. And then delay the closure of the wound to ensure that the area can be exposed to oxygen so that the oxygen can kill this bacteria, because once again, this bacteria is an obligate anaerobe. And then the antitoxin will only work for free toxins, so any toxin that is bound will actually still remain in the system, even if they use the hyperimmune human globulin. And then for prevention, there is the toxoid vaccine that is available. So think about the orange syringe. Let's see where that syringe is. I can't remember. Anyways, just picture the orange syringe lying somewhere over there. And then also remember that the toxoid is a formaldehyde inactivated toxin. In other words, it is a toxin inactivated by formaldehyde. So this is important because disinfectants have poor sporicidal action. So this vaccine is useful in that sense. And so the care of wounds will involve proper wound cleansing and care plus treatment. And once again, remember to consider keeping the wound open or delay the closure of the wound to expose the bacteria to oxygen. So yeah, that is it for today's video. Feel free to comment down below any other information that needs to be mentioned about the Clostridium tetani, or any other clarifications that need to be made. I hope to be back with more relaxing ASMR videos like this, and feel free to like and subscribe for more of such content. Other than that, I'll see you all next time.